Hey, everybody, welcome to Mondays with Mike and happy Pi Day Eve. No, not Friday Eve, Pi Day Eve. Tomorrow is March 14th, 314, which is the first three numbers of pi, the ratio of a circle's diameter to its circumference, 3.14. And of course, it goes on and on and on. So I want to talk a little bit about that. I'm not going to bore you with it for a long time, but I love this kind of stuff. And then I'm also going to talk about coming up some science news of the week, including a new asteroid discovered by NASA that could slam into the Earth in 20 years. Got to know about that one. Got to make plans for that one. We also have another rocket launch that's going to happen tomorrow. We have flooding, a catastrophic flooding that's taking place in many parts around the world, including here in the United States. So let's get into it, just beginning with Pi Day. Okay, so what do you remember what pi is? I know a lot of people probably have like these horrible memories of high school geometry and you know, not ever wanting to talk about it again. But it's really amazing because pi is what we call an irrational number. Irrational meaning it can't be expressed as a fraction. So you can't say these two numbers, 1 divided by 10, that number goes on forever, 0.11111, but it's still rational because you could show it as a fraction. Pi, you can't do that. So I wanted to show you, though, before we had computers and all of that stuff. Well, first of all, what is pi? Okay. Pi just means that if this is a circle and the diameter of the circle is 1, then the circumference or the outside of the circle is pi, which is about 3.14159. And then it goes on forever. And they've calculated it out to billions of digits, and it just never ends. But here's what I think is neat, and this is the only thing that I'm going to bore you with, okay? I promise. And then I'll move on. But I like my whiteboard, okay? This is what I want to show you, that as amazing as it is, do you know that more than 2,000 years ago, Greek mathematicians and mathematicians from China both worked out pi to incredibly precise values without any computers and only using a straight edge and a lot of time. So here we go. So you take a circle, and what they figured out was that here's the basics of it. This is the basics of it, okay? Let's say you draw a square around the circle, and then you draw a square inside the circle, okay? Well, now we know that pi is somewhere between the perimeter of this square and the perimeter of that square. It's somewhere between the big square and the little square, okay? So with that in mind, we can get a more precise, I say we, the ancient mathematicians, got a more precise measurement of pi by adding more sides. So let's use a hexagon. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's an ugly hexagon, but just stay with me. 6. And then you put one on the inside. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so you add up all the sides of the hexagon on the inside, and then you add up all the sides on the outside, and then you know that pi is between those two numbers, right? So what they did back in the day is they constructed, again, this is just using a straight edge and angles and things like that. What they would do is they would make a polygon with more and more and more sides. I think they got up to like 17 sides. And so they knew that if they put the circle inside of here, that they could get a closer and closer approximation of pi by adding more sides to the polygon. And so would you believe, this is going 2,000 years ago, this was actually before the time of Christ, before Christ. Archimedes had narrowed it down to approximately 3.142, about this much, which he did just by calculating those polygons. The Chinese, again, this was about 180. They had it down, I believe, to like 3.41 something really close to that, 2,000 years ago. So anyway, what's amazing is that to this day, we know it can be proven that it has no end. It goes on forever. But I just think the wisdom of the ancients is pretty awesome. All right, I'm going to switch it back to regular mode. We're going to check out some stuff on the web, and I'll show you some of the science news of the week. All right, so now I've switched positions to, well, just talk a little bit about science news of the week. As I mentioned a moment ago, we got some stuff going on. So let me go ahead, share my screen, and just kind of let you know what I have been looking at, weather-wise and otherwise. By the way, here's kind of what I was just referring to here, which is this Archimedes right there, who narrowed down pi to between these numbers. These fractions, he knew that it was more than 223 divided by 71, and he knew it was less by 22 divided by 7. How do you like that? All right, so let's start off with this news, which is that there is a newly discovered asteroid that has a 1 in 600 chance of colliding with the Earth in the year 2046, which is like right around the corner. I mean, it's 23 years from now. And this asteroid, look, has a 1 in 600 chance. Well, look, people play the lottery all the time, and you have like a 1 in 1,000 chance, on that three, whatever the daily one that you pick three numbers. So this, we have a better chance for that. There is a branch of NASA where they track what they call near Earth objects. Where they do their best to spot these asteroids. And you may wonder, like, gosh, what, this thing is kind of close, 23 years away. But asteroids are so dark, they're very difficult to see. And so a lot of times NASA can't see them unless they're really large or unless they're really close. So in this case, they estimate it to be 50 meters in diameter, 165 feet across, which is the length of an Olympic-size swimming pool. Yikes. And it's going to make a very close approach to Earth on Valentine's Day of 2046. So how do you like that? This is what it looks like. It is pretty big there, the size of an Olympic-sized swimming pool, and it is going to be moving toward us. I don't know, did they give a speed on this thing, a velocity on this thing? Let's see. These things are typically moving at something about 10,000 miles an hour. I will tell you, though, that what am I doing here? I'm gonna have to edit this. I will tell you that the explosion that occurred over Russia about 10 years ago, 2013, which you could look up video of on YouTube. Big explosion from an asteroid. And apparently the asteroid was approximately this size. So it's, it would be an event. It would definitely be an event if it collided with Earth. So we got that going for us, right? So put that on your calendar. February 14th, 2046, we might all get hit by an asteroid. Also, you've probably noticed in the western sky, we've had this beautiful view of Venus and Saturn. And it really was most noticeable at the beginning of March. Oh, beautiful. They were like right next to each other. You saw a super bright object with a slightly less bright object. That was Venus on top and Jupiter on the bottom. That is Venus right there in the middle of your screen. And what you'll find is that Venus is going to stay very, very bright after sunset, but that as we continue through the month, it's going to get farther and farther away from Jupiter. And eventually Jupiter is going to be right next to the sun, and then you won't be able to see it anymore. So that'll be kind of cool to continue to watch that. And it's great education for kids too, because you just wait till sunset. Maybe you go out like around 8 o'clock at night, and you just look off toward the west and you'll see this beautiful, beautiful display of planets in the sky. And then, by the way, once you find Venus, if you look up kind of that way, you'll be able to see Mars. So it's very cool to see. All right. In other space news, we have tomorrow. Well, there are a couple of opportunities where, um, from Kennedy Space Center, they are going to launch another one of these Dragon spacecrafts, SpaceX. They're on a cargo resupply mission to the International Space Station. So they're going to attempt to launch that. It has been a little bit stormy in Florida. There's a chance for storms today, might clear out a little bit tomorrow. This was supposed to launch last week and it was delayed. So we shall see. But this is, again, it's another one of those commercial um, commercial spacecrafts that are now doing the job that NASA, used to do. And speaking of spacecrafts, this was neat. So some information came out a few days ago that there was an analysis done on the. So you remember back in October when NASA took this refrigerator-sized spaceship and slammed it into an asteroid. Um, there were two asteroids actually that kind of orbit around each other, and they smashed at about 10,000 miles per hour, 15,000 miles per hour, very, very fast. They smashed this thing that you see there on your screen into the asteroid. And here's the good news is that scientists have studied it now for the last 6 months, and they've discovered that they do think that that impact disrupted the orbit enough of those asteroids that they would have the capability, in theory, to knock an asteroid off its course if it were in Armageddon style coming toward the Earth. Now, maybe we'll get a chance to use that with that one that I just mentioned, right? So again, this was called the DART mission, and it was successful. So, and it didn't have to move it that much. Didn't have to move it that much. It just had to move it a little bit. So, and it gives the dimension of this thing as well. I mean, it was like 4 feet by 4.5 feet by 4.5 feet. I mean, this is not a gigantic thing, but it was moving so fast that it ended up hitting the amount of energy um, was like 10 billion joules of energy, which could be enough to like all the electricity that you would use for your house for an entire year. That kind of energy, all in one impact. So kind of neat, kind of neat stuff. Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about the nasty weather hitting the country. So here in California, over the next couple of days, if you look on the left-hand side of your screen, you see that red popping up there. That is where there's a moderate risk for excessive rain, meaning flooding. Another one of these atmospheric rivers is flowing into California. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and zip through this too. The dark green indicates areas where we have what's called a high precipitable water. So when I put this in motion, see, you're going to see that blue coming in right there. That's the really high moisture levels. And so that's coming in, let's see, tomorrow. It says 18Z Tuesday, so that's basically noon tomorrow. So tomorrow morning and then tomorrow afternoon, we have this just influx of moisture coming into California. So that is not going to be good for them heading into Tuesday and Wednesday. Very likely that they are going to see some significant flooding. All right, speaking of flooding, this is kind of a weird deal. So we ran a story this morning that kind of caught me off guard a little bit. Not that I follow Peruvian weather very much, but the nation of Peru, the government of Peru, is referring to a cyclone. They made it sound like a tropical cyclone that is responsible for flooding taking place across Peru. Very serious, in fact, deadly flooding. And they are calling it Cyclone Yaku. Now, the problem with that is that tropical cyclones don't hit Peru. Why don't they hit Peru? Peru is right on the equator. And so it's not an area that typically gets hit by typhoons, cyclones, hurricanes, whatever you want to call them. I don't know if it's never happened before, but it's extremely, extremely rare. And I even went back and looked at all the computer models and backed them up a week and was looking, and there was no tropical cyclone there. What there is, though, is that they got caught under an area called the Intertropical Convergence Zone, which is an area of very heavy rain that happens in the tropics. That shifts to the south this time of the year. And because remember, it's late winter in our part of the world, it's late summer in their part of the world. So they're kind of, in the wet season, but it's not a hurricane. So if you see this it's no doubt it's tragic flooding, terrible, terrible flooding that took place, but it wasn't a tropical cyclone similar to a hurricane at all, despite the fact that they're calling it a cyclone. So I thought that was kind of interesting. I really had to go back and do a little bit of research on it, but really a little bit of a misconception. Okay, as far as weather across the country, I did want to let you know that in addition to the flooding that we were just talking about in California, there is going to be a nor'easter storm in the Northeast, which is why it's called a nor'easter. I mean, you get northeast winds, and so they call it a nor'easter. It also happens to hit the northeastern United States. So, but anyway, these are very strong areas of low pressure that bring wind and rain and very often snow, coastal flooding, and so forth to the northeastern United States. And so let me go ahead and pull this up. This is, again, this is a GFS computer model view, and I'm going to choose this is, by the way, tropicaltidbits.com, which is run by Levi Cowan, who is a fellow Florida State Seminole. It's a great website. And anyway, so let me go ahead. So we're focused here on the northeastern United States. That's New York State. And so if we click ahead in motion here, look at this. So this is Tuesday night. This is tomorrow night with this big area of low pressure and all that blue indicating heavy snow and most likely very high winds, like 40, 50, 60 mile an hour winds. So that is going to be an absolute mess for the Northeast coming up Tuesday. And then they're going to get pretty chilly coming up Wednesday. So this is really going to be about a 36-hour event coming in tonight and then extending through tomorrow, through their Pi Day. So that's what's going to be happening up there. So obviously there was a lot to talk about, right? California flooding, Northeast snow, flooding in Peru. There was one more thing that I wanted to share with you, and it's interesting because we don't talk about weather hitting Africa very often. We don't really talk about international weather very much at all. But I did want to show you this, that there was a typhoon named Freddy. And let me go ahead and look this up here, because I had a good map for you, and for some reason it disappeared on me. Ferocious Freddy. So here we go. So this is not a hurricane that threatens the United States, but so this is a Fox Weather's website. And so this thing has just set the record for being the longest lived tropical cyclone on record. Okay. This one formed, okay, today is March 13th. This storm formed on February the 6th. Can you imagine that? And it's moved all the way across the Indian Ocean, and it has been hanging around Madagascar and Mozambique for 2 weeks. It's been stuck in a steering current here, and it's gone back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, making multiple landfalls here. So here we go. Whoops. Just making a loud noise right now. Stop it. So this is the path of Freddy's here. So you look on the right-hand side of your screen, and you see this is over by Indonesia. It moved all the way across the Indian Ocean. Took 2 weeks. Made landfall in Madagascar. Made landfall in Mozambique. It moved back out, made another landfall in Madagascar. Then moved back in and made another landfall in Mozambique. And this took 5 weeks. The same storm, 5 weeks, and it was a Category 5 equivalent at times as well. So anyway, I think that's one of the most remarkable stories that I've seen in tropical weather is a cyclone which lasted 5 weeks in the Indian Ocean and bounced around 2 countries for 2 weeks, which is also almost unheard of. So anyway, again, happy Pi Day Eve to you. Shout out to my brother Neil and my mom, the only ones who watched this all the way through from beginning to end. Thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope you enjoy your spring break. It's going to be a cool spring break here across the Houston area.